Games that are great when they launch don't always feel quite so good to go back 2 years down the line. That makes sense, of course. Like any entertainment medium, video games are constantly iterating, evolving, growing, and changing. So improvements made over the course of, say, a decade or 2 decades might, in retrospect, make something that was considered amazing back then feel dated now. That said, some games don't seem to be at the mercy of time. Games that are so incredibly well designed that no matter how old they get, they're always a blast to play through. Here we're going to talk about a few such games. Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. You could basically put any Metal Gear Solid game in this list, but while Metal Gear Solid 3 is relatively more large-scale, and Metal Gear Solid 1 markedly more aged, Metal Gear Solid 2 feels just timeless. To this day, it's one of the most mechanically tight and dense stealth games we've ever played, and everything from its story to its level design to the boss fights is still top-notch. Silent Hill 2. Launched right in the middle of the golden era of survival horror games, and even then it was instantly lauded as one of the best horror games of all time. It's no less deserving of that kind of praise today. Its incredible atmosphere, monster designs, story, and psychological horror are just as effective as they were over 20 years ago. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. In a franchise that's as full of generation-defining games as The Legend of Zelda is, A Link to the Past is considered one of its best entries ever, even now. 3 decades on from its launch, that should tell you something about how unbelievably good this game is. From world design to music, from boss fights to dungeons, from its sense of discovery to so much more, this is a game that nailed almost everything it attempted in a way very few other games have ever managed since then. Half-Life 2. Pretty much every ranking for the best first-person shooters of all time has a special spot reserved for Half-Life 2. And as the millions that have played the game will attest to, even if you go back to the game to this day, you'll see why it's still worthy of all that praise. Maybe its storytelling methods aren't as revolutionary anymore as they once were, but Half-Life 2 still tells a captivating story, is full of unforgettable moments, and is an excellently designed shooter, with some of the best physics you'll ever see in a game. Street Fighter 2. Street Fighter was once the unequivocal king of the fighting genre, and no game exemplifies that better than the legendary Street Fighter 2. Sure, there are tons of older Street Fighter games out there that you can go back to and still have a blast with, but if you want a pure, concentrated dose of masterful fighting gameplay, dive back into Street Fighter 2. It's still that darn good. Sonic the Hedgehog 2. Sonic the Hedgehog's trajectory has been a little bumpy in recent years, and even though we're hopeful for a brighter future, with Sonic Frontiers, no one will be able to take the series' past away from it, and no game characterizes that glorious past as well as Sonic the Hedgehog 2 does. Still considered one of the best platformers ever made, Sonic 2 boasts excellent level design, music, and that trademark sense of speed and momentum. And no matter how much time passes, it's highly unlikely those things will ever stop being fun. Pokémon Gold and Silver. We've had many excellent Pokémon games since 1999, but none have ever even come close to matching the masterpiece that is Gold and Silver. This gem of a game blew us away when it first launched, but even going back to it today, it's still a special experience. Johto is still a really well-designed region. The difficulty balancing is just right. There's an excellent roster of Pokemon in there, there's plenty of secrets to discover, and there's 2 whole regions to go through. It's hard to imagine any Pokemon game ever getting close to that level of excellence. Super Mario World. Super Mario World is, simply put, platforming perfection. It nails everything it needs to, from movement to level design, from its power-ups to the music, and so much else. And of course, it's also served as the introduction of Yoshi, which just makes it that much more special. Zone of the Enders: The Second Runner. Zone of the Enders: The Second Runner's excellent art style transformed from great cutscenes to even better gameplay that moved along at a fast pace. An underrated PlayStation classic, Zone of the Enders: The Second Runner was an anime video game done absolutely right. Zone of the Enders: The Second Runner emphasizes the fast-paced nature of its combat with excellent results. Combined with its diverse weaponry and fast-paced hack-and-slash combat, Zone of the Enders: The Second Runner has aged beautifully. Burnout 3: Takedown. No matter how good racing games get, Criterion's 2004 classic Burnout 3 Takedown will always deserve a place in the genre's upper echelons. As an arcade racer, it knows exactly what it needs to get right: speed, carnage, music, track design. In all of these areas and more, Burnout 3 exhibits an unparalleled mastery to this day. Simply picking up a controller and jumping into road rage or crash mode, even just for a few minutes, will give you more fun than most racing games ever released could hope to. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Rockstar has dragged GTA 5 through 3 console generations at this point, so we've already got a technically older game in the series to go back to, but if you want to go even further back, San Andreas is perhaps just as good, or many might argue maybe even better. That massive open world might not seem so massive anymore, but GTA San Andreas is still an excellent game. Whether you're going through its captivating story, or simply getting lost in its rich and mechanically dense open world, this is a game you could easily pour dozens of hours into. Halo Combat Evolved. Credited as the game that effectively defined what every modern console first-person shooter looks like, Halo Combat Evolved's legacy is obviously never going to fade away. But this is a game that cements that legacy by being truly timeless. There are some obvious ways in which Halo Combat Evolved shows its age if you go back to it today, but in the areas that matter most, the combat, the weapons, the enemies, the environments, it's still amazing. Sure, the library is a pain in the neck, but the vast majority of the game is still top-notch. Okami. The developer's 2006 Zelda-like action-adventure game Okami is the quintessential cult classic. A critical darling, loved by everyone who played it, but didn't perform very well in terms of sales. Thankfully, several re-releases over the years have seen the game accumulating respectable numbers, which it fully deserves, because it's still an outstanding game. It's unique, it looks amazing, and it's incredibly well designed. Here's hoping Okami eventually comes back in the future, because this is a game that deserves all the recognition in the world. Resident Evil 2002. The Resident Evil remake launched on the GameCube in 2002, 6 years after the launch of the original game, but the developer made it seem like a significantly bigger jump. Visually, of course, it was a night and day difference. And even now, with its gorgeous pre-rendered backgrounds, the RE1 remake still looks great, especially the HD remaster. Meanwhile, the level design, the story, the exploration, the horror, all of that hasn't lost any of its appeal, even 20 years later. System Shock 2. Whether you're looking at System Shock 2 as an action RPG, a survival horror game, or as an immersive sim, it's undeniable that it's at an equally prestigious footing in all of these genres. Thankfully, it's also one of those all-time greats that hasn't lost its charm over 2 decades on from its launch. Its incredible setting, atmosphere, level design, and systems-driven gameplay are truly timeless, and likely always will be. That's all for now. If you enjoy what you saw, please hit the like button. And if you're new to the channel, now is a great time to subscribe. We upload brand new videos every single day. After subscribing, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you next time, right here on Gaming Bolt.